Hello and welcome to another Parousia Podcast. I'm Charbel Raish, your host, and I'm coming from the Voice of Charity studios here. And so welcome to everyone watching and listening around the world. You can be listening, those in Sydney on 17:01 a.m. And of course, those around the world, you are either listening to this via the podcast platforms on our website at parousiamedia.com or Facebook, as well as YouTube and the many other platforms that they're on. You can comment. You're free to comment, ask questions in the chat, especially on the Facebook feed at the moment. But any question you do have, you can send us an email at parousiamedia.com to the contact us, and we'll be able to respond. My guest this morning, all the way at the moment in the United States, as I understand, or is he in Canada? Sorry, on Pacific time. But Daniel Whitehead, who is now running or at the moment directing Sanctuary Health Ministries or Mental Health Ministries. It's a very interesting apostolate that is aimed at helping people suffer with mental illness, helping them overcome that or with that, but in a spiritual context, which is something that's been needed for many years, in my opinion. Do we realize that 1 in 4 people are suffering from mental health out there? There could be those sitting next to us at church. We don't even realize. So we're very excited because at Parousia we've just partnered with Sanctuary Mental Health, and we've launched a course for Catholics. It's on the Parousia On Demand platform right now, and I encourage you to look at that. We're going to talk about all of that today. So let's welcome Daniel Whitehead. Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
Hey, Charbel. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Congratulations on just the great work with the course, by the way. I've been looking through that and very impressed with the quality and the impact that it has.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. It was, it takes a lot of work to create a resource like that, from the concept all the way through production to post-production, and bringing a lot of very talented people together from around the world. So it was a lot of work, but we're thrilled with the results, and we're already getting some great feedback. So delighted that the patrons in Australia will be benefiting from it as well.
Yeah, praise God. Let's talk about maybe just what you do, Sanctuary Health Ministries, or is it Mental Health Ministry?
Yes.
Let's talk about what is that and what do you aim at doing with that work?
Yeah, so Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries is a Canadian-based charity. It was founded in Vancouver, Canada. I'm originally from England, so I have a strange accent, but it's not a Canadian accent. But I now live in Vancouver, and we actually do now have an office in London, England as well. And we create resources that help the church, and we have a very broad definition of church. We work across denominations, but we help churches around the world to facilitate really good, healthy conversations that integrate theology and faith with psychology and lived experience. How do we bring these different perspectives together? Because when we do that, we believe we find a new and more helpful way of holding this subject, which just allows communities of faith to become even more supportive and more understanding places for people in the midst of crisis.
Yeah, well, fantastic. How long has it been operating now? What are we at? How many years now?
Yeah, so Sanctuary is a 10-year-old nonprofit,
Okay.
but for the first 7 years, we were very much a local regional ministry in Vancouver, Canada. And it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that we've branched out to become more of an international focus with the Sanctuary course. And obviously the Sanctuary course for Catholics is the resource that we're referring to that's now on Parousia Media.
Yeah, fantastic. Can we touch on, I guess, the importance of this work? Many priests and leaders, church leaders, probably are not really equipped in this day and age, and we need to be more in this space of mental health. We do have, and being Christians and Catholics around, this battle between what is a spiritual sort of need and what is a mental or diagnosed problem. And what are the stats? I mean, can you tell? It's quite alarming, but there are more people suffering from mental illness than we realize. What are the? Can you give us a bit of a background or bring us up to date to where are we at the moment in our world with mental illness?
Yeah, so depending on which study you refer to, it's generally regarded as somewhere between 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people in any given year will experience a mental health crisis. Um, in truth, though, it's thought by many people that the stats are probably greater than that, because
Wow.
that's only acknowledging people who understand or know or are ready to admit that they're experiencing challenges. So many people would speculate it's more like 1 in 3, and then you throw in a global pandemic, and it's probably even more than that. So the statistics are startling, and one thing the statistics show us is that this is irrespective of faith allegiance or not. The statistics are just as applicable in the church as outside of the church. So very often, faith communities, well-meaning faith communities, can believe that somehow faith creates this protective barrier that prevents people from experiencing mental health crisis. And actually, the opposite is true. And sometimes what that implicit feeling can do is it can cause people of faith to push it down and hold it and not talk about it, which only compounds people's experiences. So really our work is about having those conversations in a really healthy way that brings the whole faith community together to have a conversation that allows people to process their experiences and to invite God and faith into those experiences. Because if we believe anything as people of faith, is that God is with us in the difficult times as well as the good ones.
Certainly is a help, isn't it? Our faith, when you can work together, both with professionals in the psychological world, but and our faith leaders, if we can work through this in our church context, it does make a big difference, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and I think it's a really critical piece is for churches to understand that they have a key role to play in someone's recovery. It isn't just up to doctors to do their job, though we need doctors to do their jobs. It's also the role of the spiritual community to foster faith, to pray, to support, to be that, to be those good spiritual friends to each other. That's a very important part. I would say just as important as the role of doctors, which is also important.
Can I ask, just yourself personally, are you the founder of Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, or were you there at the very early years?
Yeah, no, I actually took over 5 years ago from the founding director, who's Reverend Dr. Sharon Smith, who's actually now a mainline Anglican priest, funny enough. She wasn't when she started, but her role is interesting because when you look at her vocation, she was an occupational therapist for 20 years. Then she was an academic. She did a PhD. Then she did theology degrees and got ordained in the Anglican Church. And also about 15 years ago, her husband died by suicide. So Sharon really brought together this academic, church, clinical, lived experience, this very real experience of having been through a very difficult and painful experience with mental health. And it's in bringing all of those different angles together that has defined how Sanctuary approaches this subject. It's about drawing from our faith and drawing from clinical work and drawing from lived experience and drawing from theology and bringing it together and finding a new way to talk about it.
Yeah, wow. No, thank God that it has been created and established, because there's a lot of people out there suffering, more than we realize, in our own churches. The course, can you tell us about then your involvement as you came on? Was the course one of the first things, one of the major projects there? Because it started off not for Catholics, it was a general course to begin with for all Christians.
Yes.
Can you tell us about, I guess, a timeline there of how the course came about?
Yeah, so when I came into my role in 2016, I was the new director of Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries. My instinct told me that what was really lacking was a course, a resource, something that anyone anywhere could pick up and use that would help to integrate faith and mental health. I just saw there was this gap in the market. So it was an idea in 2016, and in 2017 we said, let's do it. And in 2018 we launched. And by January 2019, I put our ecumenical resource, the Sanctuary course, in the hands of some prominent Catholics in North America, people involved with a platform called Formed.
Yes, good friends of ours.
At the Augustine Institute in Denver. And they really liked the ecumenical version and said we'd like to use it. And I said, well, before you do, I think there might be some merit in us creating a more Catholic specific version, because as an ecumenical organization, we understand that faith and the context of our faith is really important to us. And we don't want to let any barriers get in the way of Catholics engaging in this subject. So could we explore together about creating something more specific? And they were thrilled. So it began like an 18-month journey of working with them, working with Divine Mercy University in Sterling, Virginia, on the East Coast of America, working with the Archbishop of Vancouver and the Archbishop Michael Miller, and the Archbishop of Denver, Archbishop Samuel Aquila, who both feature in the course and have been very supportive of it. So we really brought together these different institutions, different theologians, different priests and bishops to create a very Catholic feeling version of our ecumenical resource.
Yeah, it was a great idea and great suggestion, because looking at the finished product, it is very very well done. Let's talk about this course. So can we do the breakdown? What can people expect when they see this course? There's videos, there's even workbooks with it. Can you tell us about how this course looks like?
Yeah, so it's 8 sessions. The course is designed with everyone in mind. It's not designed for people who are aware they're experiencing mental health challenges, though those people can use it. It's designed for the whole church to have a safe conversation. And if you can facilitate a small group or a Bible study or a study, you can facilitate this course. You don't need to be a mental health expert, because we lay the path very clearly for people. So it's 8 sessions. And it looks at subjects like one session looks at mental illness, one looks at mental health, and talks about the difference between those two. It looks at self-care, it looks at the recovery journey, it looks at companionship, it looks at the role of community, it looks at stigma, which is a really important subject. And it's basically all of Sanctuary's work in the first 7 years of our existence. We worked with all kinds of different parishes and churches, Catholic and across the spectrum. And we worked out what do churches really need help with. And so we distilled and boiled down our message, and we've turned that into this 8-session course. So each session looks at a different subject along the lines that I've described. And each session looks at each subject from 3 perspectives.
Okay.
It looks at it from a theological perspective, it looks at it from a clinical perspective, and it looks at it from a social perspective. And every session features a film which is approximately 20 minutes long, which focuses on a particular person, a particular Catholic's lived experience. And we filmed those films from America to Britain to Canada and everywhere in between, just focusing on people's different experiences as Catholics who lived with diagnosed mental illnesses. So it tells their stories and then draws from experts from, again, across Britain and North America, sharing their insights onto the subjects as well.
Fantastic. And is there so anyone can access this course? Just simply, is it designed for a one-on-one scenario or in a group study? Can we talk about that? How it can be applied? How do people, I guess, interact with this course?
Yeah, it can be applied in a range of ways, but we designed it with small groups in mind. Okay. It was always our vision and our hope that small groups of people, study groups, parish studies, would pick it up and use it in that context. So it's really been designed with the community in mind. But of course, inevitably, a couple of friends will go through it together. It can be used in a range of different ways, and it's flexible enough to be used in that way. But our hope is that it will be picked up and used in small groups and parishes and communities like that. Yeah,
brilliant. So there is a leader's guide and a student book, is that right? Is it so someone can facilitate the discussion?
Yeah, that's right. So the workbook, which again I believe you can purchase from Parousia Media, features a leader's guide in the front as well. So if you buy that workbook, it will give you everything you need to facilitate a course. And I can't emphasize enough, people are often scared of this subject. They'll often say, what do I know about mental health? How do I talk about this? The course is designed to facilitate safe conversations. Yes. So the course will guide you. You just have to come with an open heart and a desire to create a supportive and encouraging environment for your group. The course will help you do the rest.
Oh, absolutely. Now, it was originally only available on forms in the Catholic for the Catholic audience. It was only on form. now we can announce as of today, it's on the Parousia On Demand platform as well. And so anyone who's already a subscriber to the Parousia On Demand platform, you're actually going to get access to this. Those who are not, I encourage you to come on board and have a look. And you can purchase it. And we've really looked at ways where we've made it as accessible as possible. So the videos are all up there. There's also a digital version of the workbook. And you can order, we're actually printing the workbooks as well. So people will receive a physical workbook that they can have in parish groups. And it is our wish that people take advantage of this, because the group studies are very powerful. And you don't have to be an expert, as you say. It's all there in front of you. You just have to, you play the video. As long as you're open, you're reading through the guide, going through it as a discussion group. It really is a healthy environment to set it up in. And people can have that support. I'm very excited about this because finally, I think it's been a few years now, people have asked, trying to deal with this whole area of mental health. And, personally, the amount of people that have come up to me asking for something like this, and now when you reached out, it was just providential. I couldn't help think, God, this is a hand of God moment. And I pray that this will have a very positive impact. Tell us about the impact it's had already, say, in the States, and any stories you've been hearing, particularly with this course.
Yeah, well, it's always a thrill for us when we hear about people using our resources and lives that have been touched. I think a few highlights for us is, first of all, what we're continually being told is there is nothing like this anywhere. No one has created anything like this that allows groups to come together and discuss it in this way. We've had groups set up literally all over the world that we've heard of, and we're actually just finishing off a translation into Spanish.
Wow.
To open up the South American audience. So that the first draft of the translation is complete, and we're now casting voice actors for the dubbing of the films, and we have a semi-famous actor doing the audiobook. So that's all happening, and we'll launch that later in the year. But so far, it's been amazing to see the uptake and to get the feedback and hear of communities from all over the place using this resource and having these much needed conversations.
Yeah, excellent. I know there is there is a website people can visit anyway to know more about Sanctuary. What is the website people can visit to know more about what you do?
Yeah, so if people go to sanctuarymentalhealth.org, you'll find a whole load of information on there, including we have a blog and a podcast, and we have some other resources that are available, including some that are specifically focused around COVID-19 that you can just download.
Okay.
We also have an upcoming arts project that I should definitely mention,
Yes.
where we've commissioned artists from around the world, including an Australian artist.
Oh, wow.
Features in that. He's a Indigenous artist from Australia, and we also have a Kiwi, if I'm allowed to mention the Kiwis.
Yeah, of course.
We have
We've just had Anzac Day, so.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, we have
Alliance.
a Maori artist as well, and we actually commissioned people who are representative of the BIPOC community, so Black and Indigenous and persons of color community, to create pieces of art that speak about the intersection of faith, race, and mental health. So there's actually going to be an online exhibition that you can access. You'll see it on our website, and you can actually begin to see people telling their stories of race, faith, and mental health through art, which is a whole other new thing for us, but it's just helping people to have different conversations to help open this up for people who are maybe more interested in the arts and interested in visual learning. So that's an exciting thing that people can access on our website as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I encourage everyone to visit that, and we'll get that up on the screen later in the show. We also want to play the trailer at some point in the show. There is a video trailer that promotes the course for Catholics, and that is on the YouTube channel. Jess, are we good to show that? So what I might do, Daniel, is actually we'll have our break now. We could play that trailer so people can view that, and then we'll be back in the second half just to talk about a little bit more. I'd like to get some concrete topics here to let people understand the gravity of this. I mean, we've got depression, anxiety that seems to be right throughout it. And there's other sort of mental illness, suicidal thoughts. Let's maybe just go into some examples of what people are suffering, because that just makes it a bit more concrete for the average person in the pew who actually may not be aware of how serious this problem is. But I want to play that now, if we can, the trailer for the course, the Sanctuary Mental Illness course. Let's do that now.
I was experiencing suicidal thoughts. You know, it would be better if I wasn't here. I'm really a burden on my family and I should just go away.
Heavenly Father, we come before you who have created us in your image and likeness.
I thought about dying. I just thought, what was the point? There's always something wrong with me. I can't be happy.
You have made us your sons and daughters.
Thoughts were going through my mind like, why are you here? What's the point?
We ask you, Lord, to strengthen us in our faith.
Nothing's wrong with you. You're being a little kid. You're being a baby. Get over it.
Continue to pour forth your healing spirit upon those who suffer from mental illness.
I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I saw that as something that was bad about me. If I just prayed hard enough and if I just did the right moves in my life, then God would take it away from me.
I think as Catholics, some of us can tend to over-spiritualize things and to underestimate the human and the natural.
When people might not fully understand the importance of mental health, they might say, yeah, well, maybe you just need to pray more, go to Mass more. If your faith were stronger, you wouldn't have these issues.
I'm a Christian, but I'm human. And if I can be physically ill, I can be mentally ill.
Too often when we're in a crisis, it feels like this is it. And if something doesn't happen right now, it will never be better. It's hard to see a way that this could be different. Hang in there, get help, because it really can be different.
I look up at the cross and I see Jesus' broken body. I know that he knows my suffering. He can understand what I've been through. He can understand what I will go through, and he's there for me.
There is a really profound truth that suffering unites us or pulls us closer to Christ.
The connection between me and the rest of the body of Christ is real. Suffering united with the suffering of Christ actually has implications for the church.
Faith is about me and God in the context of community, to be known by each other, to support each other, to help each other.
In relationship, that is where profound healing takes place. We're never called by God to walk through this life alone.
When there is a hand that can guide you through God, it will be inspiring to know that there's someone there who may be able to help you.
You're not alone. That's the biggest thing I could say is you're not alone.
There you go. That's the trailer for the course. Was originally only available on Formed. Now it is available on Parousia On Demand, which we're very excited about. Look, as this has been a long time coming, especially in the Catholic context. And I want to congratulate you, Daniel, for the great work there and the initiative to do this, to personalize it. Because as you say, I mean, we do want to make sure that we are in an environment we understand and we feel welcome in and we're familiar with. The quality is great. I mean, the stories are so real. The videography, the cinematography, all that is top notch. And so it's a high quality course. People are not going to be disappointed with what they see. But I mean, just some of the stories there, it's so real. Let's talk about can we pick an example of just something that people may not be familiar with in the church, just to show the need of this course. What's probably the most common thing you could give us a concrete example of the most common form of mental illness that we may not even, it's right under our very nose that we see, and we might think someone's all together with it and they're actually suffering, we don't even realize. What would be an example?
I think I think perhaps one good thing to highlight is that very often when we talk about the subject of mental health, we can assume it's too easy to assume that that's speaking about those people or someone else. when actually the mental health conversation is about every human being. If there's breath in your lungs, then you have mental health. The question is your mental health flourishing or is it languishing? And really the course does help people to grapple with that. There are some people who, when they look at the course, go, well, I don't need to do that. I don't have any mental health problems. And actually, when people go through it, they begin to go, oh, hang on a minute. I can acknowledge that in certain times and phases of my life, my mental health has struggled. And in that sense, we understand that mental health is something that is moving and changing all the time, depending on our exterior circumstances, what is actually happening in our lives. And it's more than just what is happening. It can be related to our biomedical makeup. It can be related to all kinds of situations, trauma, things that have happened to us in the past. And when we think of the pandemic, the global pandemic, I know that Australia has done an amazing job of locking down and for a long period of being very strict and then being able to open up again. And I know because I have family in Australia, and we look at their pictures on social media really enviously that you can meet together as families and be close, whereas in Vancouver we have to be distant still. And I think the pandemic is a great example that many of us have wrestled with our own sense of mental well-being in a different way since the pandemic began. Many of us have found ourselves maybe feeling more anxious about things than we had before, about our work, about the safety of our children and our elderly relatives. All of these things can create anxiety that has an impact on our mental health. And of course, the way to address something like anxiety it isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Very often it takes many different things working together, coalescing together to help restore well-being to us. And that can look like, it may be a medical intervention. It may be that a doctor needs to prescribe something for a season. It may be that talking therapy, talking to a therapist, talking to a friend, being prayed for by people. Also remembering to exercise and get your heart rate up, remembering to sleep well, to eat right. All of these things have an impact on our sense of mental well-being, and depending on the way we're made up as an individual will dictate which emphases we need to place on which area. So anxiety would be a very common experience, particularly at the moment with the global pandemic, where so much is unknown, where so many people are fearing for the future and wondering, when will I see my family again? When will I be able to travel and visit? I mean, I have family all over the world, and I haven't seen them for a year and a half. And that has a bearing on my own sense of well-being. And so the course opens up the subject and gives us all permission to acknowledge our own mental health journeys. And listen, if it's not us today, it could be us tomorrow or next year, because I've never met a human being who planned on having a mental health crisis. I never met someone who said, when I turn 45, I'm going to have a breakdown and I'm going to be diagnosed with some disorder. No one plans on it, but it does happen. And so we have to have a framework to understand it and understand that God is with us in the midst, and God can speak through and use us even in the midst of profound suffering.
Yeah, well, very well said. What a great point. We're all in this together. We never know. It might happen tomorrow, but we don't plan it, as you say. Many people may not even realize. I mean, I could share something personal that I'm happy in this context to share. But I remember the first, there was a time in my life, and this was after my conversion, so this is now practicing my faith. This is after Parousia started, and everything was going really well, but I actually had, for a small moment, for about 2 weeks, this emptiness, this dryness, and even suicidal thoughts. And where did that come from? And I remember linking it to one of the tools we were discussing the topic of exorcism. So it was a very dark topic, and the problem of evil in the world. And it was funny. I was coming across a lot more people who were experiencing all sorts of things, and I think this darkness came upon me or something like that. And for 2 weeks, even though things were going really well with my family, baby 3 was born and things were going well, life was good, but I remember driving on the way to work, and just this thought of I could just run into that truck right now and just end it right now for no reason. And I thought, I know better than that. I know not to. That's not me. But for some reason, these thoughts came for 2 weeks, and I think God allowed me to go through that little bit of suffering for 2 weeks to understand how serious this can be, and it can get the best of us. And we may think we're immune to it all, but no, there's certainly this can happen to any one of us. And I think it happened again 6 months later, and this was another time in life where things were going really well, but for 2 weeks there was this emptiness, there was dryness, and I just, although my children were having fun, my wife was, everyone was in a good mood, everyone was fine, I just was not joyful in any way, happy, and it was just, I couldn't celebrate with them, it was just another 2 weeks. I remember distinctly, it was the same year for 2 weeks on 2 different occasions, 6 months apart, and I could pinpoint when it happened. And thanks be to God, thanks to my faith, it gave me that motivation and the tools I needed then and the support I needed. But if I didn't have any support, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, at the time, and so that's something that I don't really share often. But I just thought it can happen to any one of us, and that was we're going back 10 years now. But I think in times during your life, it can happen as well. Just maybe for a moment, it could be like for a day or a couple of days, and you might be like, wow, and you can have these moments where you could do bad decisions, make bad decisions during the lowest parts of your life. And so it is something that is it needs to be understood a lot more, and we're not to judge people. I think we can be quick to judge people's actions and not realize what they're going through mentally. And how often do we, as Christians as well, we may be quick to condemn people for what they've done, but we have absolutely no idea what they're going through on the inside. I mean, how common is that among Christians? What can we be doing better as the body of Christ?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, let me thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. I think that's a real gift for the people listening, because you're absolutely right. This is something any of us can experience. And, one tendency, I don't mean to generalize, but among Christians who are trying to live out a triumphant life, and a tendency can be to be quite reductionistic with a subject like mental illness, to just simply say, you need to be more spiritual. You need to somehow summon your spiritual energy. And of course, I remember I'd done a couple of theology degrees, but my old New Testament professor once said to me, and I'm using quotation marks for those who are listening and not watching. He says, many demons have been cast out with a good night's sleep and a proper meal. And I mean that quite half facetiously, but the point is, there are very practical things we need to function as human beings. God's made us that way. We need good nutrition. We need rest. And very often at a point of emptiness, maybe when we've been through a really busy season, there can be this feeling of numbness, this feeling of, I just don't, it's like anti-feeling. And really that is depression. It doesn't mean it's clinical depression, but depression is not feeling. Depression isn't sadness. It's numbness. It's a sense in which, and there's a difference between clinical depression and more like circumstantial depression. And all of us probably experience those feelings on some level at some point in our lives, even if it's just for a moment or for an afternoon because of a situation. But the point is, as spiritual people who believe in God, we of course believe in a spiritual reality. We of course bring our whole selves into the light of who God is and the work of his Spirit. But we also need to understand we are made biologically, and God has made us this way, and we need to rest, and we need to recuperate after busy seasons, and we need to listen to our bodies. So when you felt those feelings as you were driving, it says something's not right. I need to change some things. Maybe I need to rest. Maybe I need to talk to someone about this, which is a great thing to do. But if you're feeling scared because you say, well, people will judge me or condemn me or tell me that my faith isn't strong enough, you might not tell someone. And that is the beginning of isolating and compounding the problem, so that it doesn't just become a phase, a difficult phase. It can become a much longer experience, and it can become a lifetime. And And listen, it's not an easy subject to talk about. I'm glad you brought up suicidal ideation, because suicide is a very real thing, and it's something we need to talk about, and it's okay to talk about it, because again, the time when our organization is reached out to from faith communities is normally when something's happened.
That's right.
When something terrible's happened, and we're always there to talk and to help and equip and support, but we need to talk about it now, so that we're not being called after the event, but we're able to begin to open this up and let people know that it's okay. God is with them, and a community is with them to offer them help and support and strengthening along the way.
I mean, thank you. The topic of suicide, do we have any statistics of that or comparisons of, I understand that in developed countries, that is actually higher than the developing world, the third world, which is fascinating, because you think we need to help the third world, right? And we might be thinking we've got it all, we've got a comfortable life, we've got running water, we've got electricity, everything is hygienically clean, and then you go to the third world, it's dirty, and we need to help them. But there's something that we're probably missing here, and it's this idea of our purpose. And sometimes we're very distracted in a developed world. We're putting out pressures on our own selves, and we're trying to live up to some sort of ideal, and we fall short. And suicidal thoughts seem to be, and suicide in general is higher in the developed countries than the third world country. What is going on?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I haven't seen the research, so I am only speculating here. Yeah. But I think, and I've no reason to not believe those statistics. That in some ways, sadly, they don't surprise me. If I'd have to see the research. But my feeling is purpose is critical, and in many majority world cultures, it's funny. My second master's degree in theology was looking at majority world theological perspectives, and how a theology of mental health actually fits better in many majority world perspectives, because many majority world cultures have this idea that community and relationship is where I find myself. Whereas in the West, we tend to have individualism. So in the West, our vision of the purpose of human life implicitly in our culture is to be independent. A successful person is an independent person. Whereas actually, I think the biblical call is not independence, but interdependence. To be dependent upon one another, to be knitted together in a community with God as Father, with God as Father, with the work of the Spirit and the Son that leads us to a place of relationship and connectedness, where we're seen by each other and we're seen and held by God. But our Western culture seems to be fixated on this idea of independence, and actually in an independent place, in a place of isolation, we are more prone to suffering with mental health challenges. And the research that we do have around people who have survived suicide attempts is that the act of suicide is not a selfish act. That's a narrative we've told ourselves in society. It's not so much a selfish act, but it's an act of desperation. It's an act of exhaustion. It's because a person is so tired of trying to live. It's just so tiring to live. The only way they can find rest, it's thought in that moment of desperation, is to end their lives. And the tragedy of that is that, and I can only say this anecdotally, is many people, and it feels like it's happening more tragically, and the church is not exempt, but many people just do this. They reach a point of desperation. They don't tell anyone, and I think that's the tragedy, right? If someone can find the bravery to say, I'm experiencing this, for me, my experience of the church is you're going to have a whole family of people who are going to look them in the eye and say, I love you, I value you, I believe there's more for you, and I want to support you. And that can be the strength that someone needs to keep going and to get help and get through that difficult phase.
Yeah, very, very important. Well said. I understand that those who have overcome suicidal thoughts, many of the reasoning is they had someone there in support. They had someone there that was willing to listen to them, that wasn't going to judge them, that was going to be there for them. And it leads me to a question, just for those watching and listening. Are there any warning signs? Are there anything that parents probably wondering their teenage children, where are they at mentally? There'll be husbands and wives. Where is their spouse at? There'll be just anyone watching right now. Individuals feel alone. This loneliness. Are there signs, I guess, that we can identify in our loved ones, and then are there signs that we can identify in ourselves? So, where could we start? Is there any sort of signs that you could point us to that gives us? How do we know or prepare ourselves to before it's too late? Any tips?
I mean, I'm not a clinical expert, but I know a lot of people who are, and I pick up on things, and I've been to some trainings. Very often, some things that I know of that you can look for are like personal hygiene. Are there things you're overlooking? Are there things you're not doing that you would normally do? Habits. Are there noticeable changes in things you would normally do daily, just as part of like brushing your teeth and things like that? Are those things? Are you not doing those things? So I think there are practical things you can look for, but in truth, mental health is such a all-encompassing and broad subject. It's hard to apply general rules, but what I can say, and what I know is true from the research, is that to talk about a subject like suicide, there's often this fear that, well, if I talk about it or put the thought in someone's mind, they may act on it. And the research shows the opposite is true. If you talk about it, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm feeling really down at the moment, I may be feeling a bit of depression, for you to say to them, have you had suicidal thoughts, is not something that's only going to help them, because it normalizes what they might be feeling. And of course, they could turn around and say, well, no, I'm not, or they might be offended. But you could just say, I'm so sorry, I just wanted to check, because there's no shame from my perspective. So I think if there's anything you notice, there's any doubt, just try and talk about it and normalize the conversation. And there are many people who are going through this, and many people who have come through these kinds of situations. So I just think it's important we find a way to normalize the conversation and get it into the open where we can begin to process it.
That's a great point. We do need to be checking in, I think, constantly. As the body of Christ, we want to be doing that with our fellow brothers and sisters in the Lord. We want to be checking in how they're doing, and getting to a stage where that relationship is close enough and strong enough and comfortable enough. We shouldn't be afraid to address these areas and simply ask questions and just constantly doing it. I think it's our duty, right, as Christians. We need to be looking out for each other, but also it's not always about being preached at or being told what you're doing, but just listening. And I know that listening is probably more powerful than being told something. So I think we need to be, as a church, as the body of Christ, more of a listening to each other. And so we need to be there for each other, supporting each other, and of course praying for each other. I mean, so there is the spiritual element, and maybe as we got these last 5 minutes together, the important role on the spiritual sense. Now, we are body and soul, and so I know that in some cases there are spiritual attacks, and that's in the realm that the priest can address, but there are also mental that are clinically diagnosed and can be a problem. So we need to differentiate, and sometimes it's a bit of both. So we have to look at that, be very quick. Don't be too quick to judge that this is all from the devil, or this has got nothing to do with the spiritual life. Sometimes we can take two extremes. The role of our faith, and maybe in these last few minutes, can you just maybe emphasize the importance of our Christian faith in this space and finding that health balance spiritually and mentally?
Yeah, very good. Well, historically, medical science has talked about human beings as being biopsychosocial, biological, psychological, and social. But in recent years, even sort of secular research has incorporated spirituality into that. So that the biopsychosocial model has become a biopsychosocial spiritual model, which is really important. The challenge is that for many people in the mainstream, spiritual, you kind of have to ask, well, what do you mean by spiritual? For me, as a Christian, as a person of faith, when I talk about spirituality, I'm talking about like walking with God. That picture we have in the Genesis narrative of God walking with those who are made in His image, walking in relationship. So, as Christians with a long tradition, I think we're talking about a living relationship with the living God, and to live in a way that walks with Him. So, every aspect of our lives is incorporated into that relationship. There's no aspect of who we are as human beings that should be hidden from God. And God has made us to be biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. And I would suggest each of those aspects of our personhood interrelate. It's like I said, if you were deprived of sleep for a week, trust me, your spiritual life is going to be suffering. So, and similarly, if you have a really rich and vibrant spiritual life, your psychosocial self will be enhanced. So there is this sense in which we're interrelationally connected as human beings, and that's just how God's made us. And as you said, it's hard sometimes. We want to talk about these in silos. We want to go, I'm doing my exercise, which is good for me biologically, and I'm going to mass, which is attending to my spiritual life. But actually, sometimes doing exercise can be like a spiritual experience. I mean, God could be with you in the gyms or going for a walk, or so. I think we need to understand that it isn't as simple as neat silos, which isn't to say we don't enjoy each of those areas of our personhood, but they are connected and they are related. And so spirituality is absolutely part of the deal. But if ever we reduce it to one of those aspects, if ever we think, well, I'm just going to send this friend who's experiencing depression to the doctor, and the doctor will fix them. If ever we think that, we've missed it. We are not biomedical problems to be fixed. We are human beings made in God's image, biopsychosocial, spiritual beings. And it's not just about seeing the doctor. It is seeing the doctor, but it's also praying. It's also nutrition. It's also sleep. It's also medication, therapy. It's all of these things. And if we have all of these things to bear, even people with a diagnosed mental illness can experience well-being if they have all of these different things in place. And a really key part of that is having a spiritual community who they can talk about their experiences with, who they can get prayed for, and open it up to their spiritual life as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. It's a package deal, isn't it? To be human, it's body and soul, it's the whole person to make up our personhood. Very well said. I want to thank you, Daniel. Very exciting. Congratulations again on this course. Just again, your website again, just for those watching and listening, they can visit to know more about what you do.
Yeah, it's sanctuarymentalhealth.org, and you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So look us up there too.
Excellent. And the course as well, which is now available on Parousia On Demand. I might, as I've got Jess as we close here, Jess, people might be wondering, how do I get on? So here's what we're going to do right now, a very quick live demo. You go to parousiamedia.com. So everyone right now, if you're watching this, you can see our main homepage, and that's where pretty much everything is. And from there, I'm going to guide you as to where to go. So once you're on the homepage, you will click on the heading there, On Demand Video, right up there in the menu, right at the top. And you click on Demand. And once you're at the top there, you'll go to Parousia On Demand. As you scroll down, you can actually see some of the different catalogs. So right there, you'll see that the Sanctuary Mental Health course is right there. If you scroll down, just for me, and people will be able to see the different products. That's everything is right there. But if you want to click on catalog at the top, you can see everything. So it always opens up at the bottom there. So you've got two ways. Once you're in, and then as you can see on the first box on the left, it's right there, the very first one, multi-video series, and the Sanctuary Mental Health course is there, available right now on Parousia On Demand. So I encourage you all to go there. You just you click on Get Access, and then you purchase it, and then you'll get access to all the videos as well as the digital download. So very, very affordable, $79 there, and you get the 8 videos as well as we're going to send you out a physical workbook as well with that purchase. So take advantage of that. Very exciting. So thank you. We are out of time. Daniel, I want to thank you again for joining us. We have now launched the course. It's available now. Let's pray that people take advantage of this, and we'll be in touch. Love to get you on again sometime and see we can report back and see the results and I guess see the impact this is having. So please pray for us down under, and we're praying for you up north.
Thank you, Charbel. It is a real thrill for us to know that people in Australia are using our course. So we're very excited. Thank you for all your work and your team's work in making it happen as well.
Our absolute pleasure. So thank you again. And I want to thank all of you watching and listening. That's another Parousia Podcast. I'm Charbel Raish. Visit us at the website parousiamedia.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe and to the podcast itself, and you'll be able to get updates on all of the shows. Thanks again, and God bless.